This is Ron Ovitt, your host and author of Emotional Resilience, Living with the Fruit of the Spirit. This is Session 5, The Brain, Part 3, Soul Yearnings and Escapes. Today we're talking about soul yearnings and escapes. You know, many of us drive a car and don't know a thing about the engine or drivetrain. No problem. But to be a safe driver and take care of the car properly, we need to know the basics of how the car works, how to read the dashboard instruments, and when to change the oil, and who to call if something needs to be fixed. If we choose to simply ignore these things, we're at the mercy of the car, and that results in frustration, a sense of helplessness, and no hope of things getting better. You know, it's that way with our own behavior, isn't it? If we learn how the brain affects our behavior, it will help us know how to better run our own emotions. In this way, we'll use our mind to change our brain. It will help us find the kind of help we need with any emotional issue. If we don't, we'll be at the mercy of our emotions, living in helplessness. So with this in mind, let's continue with our study of the brain. You know, it all begins with desire. When a child is born, they're helpless. Of all creatures, the human baby is the one that's most vulnerable. You know, we're totally dependent on our caregivers. They're the ones who are supposed to feed us, protect us, and provide for us. They communicate to us that we're special, adored, and precious in their eyes. We're supposed to be safe and free to be who we really are. Our caregivers are our emotional regulators, helping our brains to develop in an emotionally healthy way. When the baby's born, the mother will take the child and download through the eyes the mirror neurons and help us emotionally regulate. They'll bring us back to joy. If something goes wrong, they comfort us, don't they? They restore us to peace. This enables us to learn that we are loved and inherently lovable and that we're safe. When you were born, you came with a note attached. Unfortunately, the note with many children were misplaced or ignored. Here's what the note said. Dear parent, you are receiving a very special and precious package. It is a soul that I have personally created. This baby is significant, and I honor them as my own child with great intrinsic worth. They are an object of my love. Therefore, note that they are lovable and need to be created that way. They are coming to you in a vulnerable state and need to know that they are always safe and will be comforted when distraught. You must honor them for the human being that they are and the fact that I have made them in my image. They are significant and should be esteemed as such. Please give them all the unconditional love you can so they will know and feel how lovable they really are. Help them mature, knowing that they have a purpose and that they are free to grow, learn, and mature without fear, living to their fullest potential. Teach them that I am their creator, that I adore them and will never leave them nor forsake them. Please let them know how glad I was to have brought them into this world. It is my desire that they grow into adults loving others in the same way that I love them. Congratulations on receiving this special gift. Signed, God. You know, right from the womb, you were meant to belong, be significant, be safe, and be comforted. It was intended that you grow up knowing that you're significant and to be filled with a purpose in this life. But for many of us, these messages never came through. Instead, these truths that should have been intrinsic in our very being have become soul yearnings. What should have been true for you has left you feeling wanting. Instead of knowing our purpose, we have deep yearnings to be all that we were supposed to be. Emotional turmoil in childhood makes us vulnerable, searching for other ways to comfort ourselves in the absence of these needs, ways that we can escape our emotional pain, comfort ourselves, and seek excitement. Now continued, they become habits and later addictions. So what do our souls yearn for? They yearn to know that you and I matter and belong, to be known as lovable and that you and I, we have worth, to be safe and comforted, to be significant and have honor, and to have a purpose. Many of our negative habits come from shame, anxiety, or desire. That means that when we don't know and understand these truths in our very being, we then seek substitutes or react in ways to protect ourselves. Once we start to see, believe, and act with this negative mindset, the more it creates a neuronal pathway, and that pathway, if not stopped, will self-perpetuate these negative beliefs, emotions, and behaviors. This is due to the way we now perceive ourselves, what we're expecting, and how we interpret our circumstances. These are negative, habitual, emotional reactions. And these negative belief habit loops then create a more extensive brain pathway. It's classic learning. And this is how loops work in addictions and depression.
And this is how habits...
This is how classic learning...
Go ahead, let's take it back. No, we'll do it right there.
Oh, this is how habit loops, right?
Yeah. Is that far enough?
Yeah, too far.
Okay. Tell me one.
Hang on, give me a spit tune there.
All right. This is how habits... Mm-hmm. It's going great.
Thanks.
This is how habits... Move it.
Yeah, right.
Just start it? Okay.
Yeah.
This is how habit... And take it. This is how, so we can have a clean break. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Smile.
Yeah. This is how habit loops work in addiction, depression, and anxiety. Think, feel, act. Think, feel, act. It's a vicious cycle. If I'm unlovable, I become afraid to put myself into a place where I may be seen as inadequate. I fear being exposed or humiliated. If pain from not belonging is too great, I feel helpless and depression can set in. I can easily become anxious as well. Escaping may seem to fix this, even for a while. If I don't have significance, I can find something that will make people take notice and know how special I am. The more a habit is like a craving, the more it is about soul yearnings. Cravings are substitutes for these soul yearnings. We end up trading acceptance, love, and nurture for a quick comfort. We call this process escapes. Escapes happen when emotions become too painful, and we escape through overindulgence in excitement, substance abuse, compulsive behavior, avoidance, people, emotionalism, or sex. Now, in moderation, each one of these has its place, but overindulgence and dependencies on these for relief from painful emotions causes problems. We were created to be resilient and bounce back from painful emotions. This is why God gave us the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. This is how we can return from our many different painful emotions. The crux of our whole program is to help you expose lies about yourself and to begin believing the truth and return to joy from these painful emotions. We want to help you make sure that your desires are about being all that you should be and can be, not something to make up for a lie you may be believing about yourself. Healthy desires are good motivators when the going gets rough. They come from a change mindset that makes your current quest about learning and moving toward maturity a reality. It takes the pressure off. It's not about a test to pass or fail. It's about growth, learning, and moving toward being all that you can be. And negative desires, those escapes, they lead to habits. In the last 2 years, I've increased my teaching emphasis on habits, what they are and how they are formed and how to use them to our advantage. It is amazing how much we do is habit-based. In fact, it's because of our soul yearnings and habits that we created to compensate that creates Whoa, back that up. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, now I see what it says.
Okay.
A little bit more. Boy, where should I go? Let's see. In the last 2 years, let's do there.
You ready?
No, down a little bit more. Right, down, no, the other way. Right there.
In the last 2 years, we'll take it from there.
All right. In the last 2 years, I've increased my teaching emphasis on habits. We'll be getting to that later in the program. Habits, what they are, how they are formed, and how to use them to our advantage. It's amazing how much of what we do is habit-based. In fact, it's because of our soul yearnings and the habits we created to compensate for them that creates a significant part of who we are. In his book, The Biology of Desire, Dr. Mark Lewis writes this: personality development is really nothing more than the laying down of habits for getting along in this world. Habits of attraction, habits of self-regulation, habits for easing emotional concerns, habits for avoiding the rough edges of our lives. So we can view addiction as a branch of personality development growing out of the residue of unmet needs and failed attempts. Uncontained anxiety and depression push us to find new sources of relief. Isn't that true? You know, it's important to remember that just because the brain assumes it doesn't mean it's right. PTSD, depression, and anxiety can occur, and most of the time they do, because of what I refer to as faulty wiring. Habits lead to addictions which substitute for unfulfilled desires. According to Dr. Mark Lewis, an opiate replaces anxiety with false comfort and perceived safety. Meth replaces fear of rejection and criticism with false reassurance, perceived strength and independence. Alcohol replaces fear and shame with false security and confidence, reducing anxiety. Of course, as we mentioned above, there are many other forms of escape as well. When we have a craving, we long to fulfill it. When we feel anxious, we long to be comforted. We want to regulate these alarming sensations. In other words, we do things to regulate our emotions. If we don't know how to delay gratification or return to a peaceful and joyful place by ourselves, we'll try to regulate or bring down the sensations through other ways that comfort or give immediate satisfaction. Drugs comfort for a while, but it's not a legitimate comfort. Overeating, gambling, pornography, being emotionally enmeshed with someone, procrastination, there are many ways to get relief, but these are not comforts that come from legitimate resolutions to a situation or painful emotions. It's just a temporary escape. Dr. Lewis explains it this way: addictions always satisfy emotional needs. Sometimes they are generic human needs, like the need for stress reduction, comfort, pleasure, self-promotion, and the need to feel connected with someone or someone outside ourselves. Since we all have these needs, any of us can become addicts. But addiction is most likely to arise from more specific needs nestled in personalities. Back it up, I read it wrong.
Okay.
A little bit more, keep going. I said something, I said someone or someone right there.
So where are we picking
Dr.
up?
Lewis explains.
Okay, Dr. Lewis explains. We'll edit it right there. Dr. Lewis explains.
Got to
Ready?
turn it on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ready?
Dr. Lewis explains, addictions always satisfy emotional needs. Sometimes they are generic human needs, like the need for stress reduction, comfort, pleasure, self-promotion, and the need to feel connected with something or someone outside ourselves. Since we all have those needs, any one of us can become addicts. But addiction is most likely to rise from more specific needs, nestled in personalities with specific wounds, the result of hurtful or disorienting conditions in childhood or adolescence. Young people are helpless to comfort their conflictual or chaotic environments and the negative emotional constellations like anxiety and depressions that result from them. In fact, the task of controlling these negative stresses can be impossibly difficult. Drugs and other addictive practices, which I call escapes, offer a potent antidote to what it is that they are feeling, to banish their senses of helplessness and escape the pit of depression, at least for a while. That's why addiction so often follows psychological, social, or physical adversity in the early years of life. This self-medication model of addiction highlights this connection, and it fits well with my emphasis on learning and development. Now, in the next session, we will be studying 6 brain parts that we need to know. Not trying to make you neuroscientists, but it's important that we know some of these things. Please take time this week to go over the written lessons and do the group questions. Also, listen to the audio that goes into more detail on today's subject. Thank you, God bless you, and we'll see you in the next session.